Welcome back to PSC's Tech Bytes. Today I want to talk with you about the ChartControl, which is part of the PnP React Reusable Controls family. It is a control really useful whenever you want to insert in a custom web part a chart to render something like a dashboard, for example, or to create a monitoring or a governance set of controls through SharePoint Framework. It is based on the chart.js component. And it provides a bunch of really useful properties, like, for example, the type of chart that you want to render, the color palette that you want to use for the items in the chart, as well as clearly the data that you want to use as the data source, which can be an explicit set of data or can be dynamic data that you load from an external data source using a specific property to bind the data source to a function which will provide dynamic content. You can also play with events whenever the user will click or resize the chart or hover on the chart. Here you can see the list of charts that you can create using this chart control. And now, like always, let me move to the demo environment and let me show you how to use it in practice. So this is the official documentation page of the chart control. You can find it under the SPFx controls React section on pnp.github.io. And as you can see here, you can have a look at the syntax about how to use it, and you can see the different flavors of charts that you can create, and specifically you can dig into all of the different kind of charts that you can render using this control. And as you can see, there is plenty of options available. Then, just as a reminder, this is the chart.js website, and this is the component, the JavaScript component, on top of which the chart PnP control has been built. And here you can see a sample solution in which I have a web part, a custom one, that I created using the PnP ChartControl. So let me show you the source code of this solution. Here I will focus just on the React component because the web part base class is not really important now, but what we do is to render the content using a React component. I play with chart.tsx component. Here, just for the sake of making an example, I defined some chart data that will be the data source for my chart. As you can see here, I defined the labels for all of the items that I will show in the chart, and then I can define one or more data sets in a collection of data sets. Every single data set will have a label and a set of data which will match to the labels that I have right here. So here I have 6 countries, and I will have 6 items for the cells and 6 more items for the customer's number for every single country. So that this will be the output for every country. I will have the sales and the customer's number, and so on and so forth. In order to render the chart control in my React component, I simply need to import the chart control and a couple of additional types which are useful to configure the chart control. So the chart palette to define all of the color palettes, and the chart type to define what kind of chart I want to render. Then in the render method of my React component, I can rely on the chart control component. I will specify the type of chart, and here you can play with the enumeration and change the flavor of chart that you want to render. For example, I can switch to pie instead of bar. And then you can also configure the color palette that you want to use. And for example, I can switch from Office Colorful 3 to Office Colorful 1, just to make an example. Then right now, in my example, I read data from this static set of items stored in this constant variable. And if I save and refresh, you can just see the output with the updated chart type and with the updated color palette. But what is really interesting is that you can also play with dynamic data loaded through a method which can rely on a backend API, for example. So if you create a method like this one, in which asynchronously you get the chart data object, which is right now still the same as before, but in theory you could read data from an external data source. Well, by doing that, you can also replace the data property with the data promise property and say that here you want to have the result of that method, and by doing that you will have the capability to dynamically load data for your chart, which is really interesting and useful scenario. So let me save this web part again, and let's wait for the build to be ready, and then we can play with it. Matter of few seconds, and if I go back to my web part, I can refresh it in the meantime, and we can see that we will have the pie chart with the different colors that we selected, and right now we are loading data ideally asynchronously, relying on a backend data source. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it interesting, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next week. And remember, subscribe to this channel. Thank you.